Hello and welcome to the Way Out podcast. Andrew Logan here. Great to be with you as always. And today I have a very, very special guest with me, and I'm going to introduce his whole backstory very, very soon. But there's even a couple of things that we just want to talk about before we get going because they're so fascinating. But today, really, we want to talk about the essential skills for success that no one's taught you. You know, the things that you aren't taught at school. And I have a very strong academic school background, and I went to university and I was doing all those things, but there were life skills that I just weren't being taught. And I know for us, and Angie and I, as a parents with a teenage daughter at the moment, just coming home and why do I need to learn this? And what am I learning this? Why aren't you teaching what you're doing and stuff like that? And obviously we'll get to that. But my guest today, Mark Herschberg, he's an author. He has an app. He's an MIT graduate, an MIT teacher, lots of things. And he teaches a career acceleration program. And we're going to talk about those sorts of things today. But as I bring him on, the first thing I want to talk about is he actually part of his life, so all the amazing things he's done. He used to track down terrorists and criminals on the dark web. So with that, Mark, welcome to the show. And can you tell me about tracking terrorists on the dark web? How did you get into that?
Thanks for having me on the show today. My background is in a couple different fields, but my graduate work at MIT was in cryptography. Cryptography is a branch of mathematics that deals with secret codes. So it's primarily used by government agencies that want to encrypt secrets or try to steal secrets from other countries. It's used by large companies who want to encrypt data, keep your data safe. The reason you can put your credit card online, it's because of people in my field who figured out how to protect it. Most of the work people with my background do is in how do we protect the data in a better way, easier, faster. How can we replace passwords, for example, with something better? That's mostly what we do. Now, I've been a CTO, a chief technology officer, for a number of years. And in some companies, I've been doing that at a cybersecurity company or sometimes other companies. So at this one particular company, they needed someone who was a CTO, but had a background in cybersecurity, and it was to do intelligence gathering. Whenever you're engaged in conflict, I'm using a term broadly, but certainly conflict that we have with hackers, it's always helpful to be prepared. It's helpful not just to build really big walls to protect yourself, but if you know who, where, when, why, how they might be coming at you, you can more appropriately marshal your defenses. So that's what we did. So I would use the analogy, we were like the CIA. We were the intelligence gathering, but for private corporations. So we'd do this, we'd go onto the dark web, we'd get that information, and then we would sell it to companies and various government agencies.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I was captain of the maths club in grade 6 or 7 or something like that. My wife still gives me a little bit of stick about that. So great to see other mathematics.
Be proud of being that.
Being very, very successful. But let's jumping into the interview, and I guess talking about the elephant in the room straight away. And when we have this conversation, obviously, say all this with the greatest of respect to college professors, school teachers, etc. My mother was a school teacher, and I even for 5 minutes in grade 10 or 11 thought I might become a school teacher. But we know that the kind of system is lacking some things and a lot of the essential skills for success. I'm going to hit on two of them in particular in the interview. A lot of these essential skills aren't being taught in schools or colleges. And why is that? Like, why aren't we modernizing our education for a 21st century world?
Yeah, great question. And there's two slightly different answers. Now, I'm going to talk mostly about the US. I know that educational system best, but obviously Australia, Europe, we've all followed very similar education models. When you look at high school is a relatively new invention, at least here in the United States. And it really began somewhere around 100, 150 years ago. Prior to that, most people grew up on farms, and you learned everything you needed to know just following your parents around. How to farm or how to keep the house. Once we industrialized, people were no longer working on the farms. They were going off to the cities, to the factories. And for the workforce to be employable, they needed certain skills, the classic reading, writing, and arithmetic, just to be capable in society. So we as a society said we have to teach people these skills. And that's where high school came in. That was great. We'll teach you fundamentals. It started to expand over the years. I had to take a foreign language. And then, of course, we learned history and civics and other areas. But that was really all high school needed to do. Just needed to teach you enough to be capable in the workforce. Now, colleges go back about 900 years. And the university system really was around people who had deep expertise in a particular area. Now, I respect professors. I work with them all the time. But let's think about who these professors are and what they're doing. If you want to get a marketing degree, you go to school, and the marketing professors have said, well, if you want a degree, here's what you have to do. You have to take these intro classes, some intermediate classes, some advanced classes. These are the bars we set for you. And the college will throw in some general requirements about a math class, a history class. And if you do all this, if you jump through all the hoops we, the experts, have set for you, at the end of the day, what do we promise? You get a piece of paper saying you have a marketing degree. We're not saying you're a good employee. We're not saying you're a good marketer. All we are saying is you have acquired a certain level of knowledge of marketing. Now, that was fine mid-century. That was fine in the 1960s when you say, hi, I'm a new marketing grad. And a company says, fine, sit in that corner, do what your boss tells you, come up with a slogan. Yes, sir. Here's a slogan. What next? New slogan. Okay, yes, sir. You just need to know marketing. But as the world changed, particularly in the 80s and 90s, as we got rid of middle management, as we collapsed the hierarchies in our companies, as we went to these new companies where we're working cross-discipline with different people, just knowing marketing is not sufficient because you're working with non-marketing people. And so learning how to be a good team player, learning how to work with salespeople and tech people, learning how to communicate and negotiate. These are the skills we need today. But the college system, 900 years, have said, just teach one narrow thing. We're going to see a change, but that's going to take probably about 20 to 30 years.
I know. I mean, again, we're talking. It's a question our daughter's asking all the time, and it's sort of, why aren't I learning about money? She's got her first part-time job, and we're talking about saving up for a car. And as you say, and again, like, it's unfortunately just, if you know how to make money, you're not going to work as an employee for a school system, right? Like you're not going to just the system doesn't allow for that creativity. And you talk about creativity and initiative, and I think part of the challenge is that they're character traits, really, like they're character traits in a person rather than academic skills. And so helping someone marry that up, or maybe you've got a different idea on it, but to me, it's like, well, how do we teach initiative into someone, or do they develop it themselves?
I do believe it's teachable. My friend Olivia Fox-Caban wrote a book a couple years ago called The Charisma Myth. Now, I would have said, well, charisma, some people have it, some don't. And what she taught me in the book, and can teach anyone who reads the book, is that charisma is a skill like accounting or golf, and you can learn it. And there are some principles, and you practice it, and you get better at it. And certainly in my own teaching, that was very enlightening for me. And my own teaching, I've seen we can help people become better leaders. We can help people become better networkers. And that's another thing. Think, well, they're just those natural people who are good at networking. Yeah, there are people who are naturally good at playing basketball, but it doesn't mean if you're not practicing and drilling, you can't be just as good, if not better. And so all of the skills, whether it's about taking initiative or being a good communicator or team player or negotiating or leading, all of these skills are learnable.
Awesome. Now, speaking of books, I mean, you just talked about a book there before. So Mark's very, very, very kindly offered to, if you share this and comment shared, depending on where you are in the world, he's going to see, if you're in the continental USA, we can send out a physical book. If you share it out and you're in other parts of the world, he will send you a digital copy of his book. So share away, comment, shared, and we'll be able to reach out. If you're in Australia, I've got a couple of little goodies here just sitting on the desk that I might be able to send you because it's just easier on everyone there. But I'm diving into leadership, like we've talked about it just there before. And I think, as you say, like leadership and charisma, and there's always this kind of, that person's a natural born leader. And I love the leadership conversation. I just did a big 2-hour Zoom training on leadership with some of our crew recently. And we're talking about, is charisma like, do you look at a leader and say they have charisma, or is it because they're charismatic they develop these leadership skills? And it can be this kind of chicken and egg conversation. So for you, what do you see as the balance between leadership and charisma? Because someone can sit there and say, well, I'm not charismatic, I can't lead.
Great example. And when you talk about the chicken and the egg, and I believe it was a Malcolm Gladwell book where he talked about in sports, it turns out a lot of athletes tended to be born earlier in the year. And the reason is that at age 7, being 6 months older actually was a big advantage. Might not be at age 24, but at age 7 it was. So the kids who were born earlier and are older in the class were bigger, stronger, faster, and they were naturally doing better at sports. So what happens? They say, oh, I like sports, so I'm going to put more time into it. And the coach gives them more play time. And those who are born later in the year, the opposite. So you get vicious and virtuous circles to encourage that. Now, the same thing I think happens with leadership or with networking, these other skills, that some of us are just naturally better at some things than others. And because of that, we get this positive reinforcement and engage in it. But again, all of us can learn these skills. And now something very important is to recognize leadership. We talk about leadership as a single term, but really I think of leadership as made up of a lot of different skills. And here's an exercise you can do at home. You can, if you're listening to this in non-real time, feel free to pause as I ask this question. Think about the leaders you admire most. They could be real, they could be fictional, doesn't matter. And then ask yourself, what is it you admire? What traits do those leaders have? And you're going to come up with a list of couple traits, dozens. I've seen lists that can get to 50, 70 different attributes. And when you look at this list, and you might even think of 2 or 3 people and say, what are the most important things? What do they have in common? Well, those are things you can work on. So just like when we think, well, I want to be a good basketball player. Okay, well, that might mean you're going to be good at shooting or good at rebounding or good at passing or a combination of the above. And so you don't just say, well, I'm going to work on being a better basketball player. You work on a particular skill. And by being a better shooter, you become a better basketball player. So when we think of leadership, you can focus on any of these traits to develop that trait, and it's going to help you with your leadership.
I think that's such a powerful exercise. And it's so key, isn't it? Like, so often the skills we need, we gain by doing them. You know, the skills you need for basketball, you gain by going out and shooting hoops. And the skills of leadership come down to, you know, be, do, have. Like, what is it that you want to develop and what is it that you want to attract in a leader? Okay, well, you have to be that person first and you have to do those things. And so breaking it down as to what do you see leadership? All right, we'll see if you can be and do those things every day. And then you will have, you know, potentially have this charisma, etc., that that people talk about it. So on that subject, as you say, I just want to talk about, so the rest of the intro for Mark, we kind of dived straight into the maths nerd stuff and I got excited, but the rest of the intro for Mark was that he was a graduate of MIT and he was teaching a career acceleration program at MIT. And then he's turned this into a book and also an app. So if you don't like books and you just love apps, you can download his apps and you can go through, and there's different categories, different subjects, go through tips, and you know, you scroll through all these little tips on certain subjects. It's really, really cool. And the app is free as well. I'll pop the thing up here so you can download that. But talking like in leadership, what do you see? Because the world is screaming out for leadership at the moment. The world is screaming out for leaders. And I know, you know, without going political or anything to a point, but you can hit a point where it's like, is this all we can do? is this the choice that I have today? But how can we ourselves, you know, help become better leaders? Because if we can help positively influence through leadership, we can take the world forward. And we're not going to take the world forward at the moment with the current vision by being separated. We need to come together with some leadership to move the world forward. So what are some top leadership tips?
The first is that everyone can start to lead today. Too many people think, well, leadership, that's what happens when I get this job, when I get the vice president job, the C-level job. Well, then I will be a leader because I will have people under me. That is not leading. That is commanding or being given authority. When we think about some of the greatest leaders throughout time, Let's think about one of my favorites, Gandhi. Now, Gandhi had no authority. He was not elected to office. He was just a man. And he said, I have a vision for an independent India. That was his vision. And he convinced other people to follow him in this vision, created a movement, and took on the largest empire in the world and won without violence. That is incredible when you think about it. This was an empire that stood for hundreds of years, one of the strongest militaries in the world, and without having to fight them, without having to fire a shot, he was able to gain independence from a much larger opponent. And that was leadership. He had no formal authority. Because real leadership, it's not command and control. Real leadership is influential leadership. It's putting forward that idea. And when you recognize this, it means you today, even if you don't have a title, even if you're the most junior person in your company, or you're just a local person in your community, you can start to lead today.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And it's that opposite approach, isn't it? Where you said the have do be mindset of people of, well, when I have more energy, I'll get up and go to the gym. And it's like, no, if you get up and go to the gym, then you'll have the energy. And so it's not a matter of when I have a title or I have a rank, then I'll step up. It's a matter of, well, when I step up, these things will happen. And then, as you say, it's incredibly important, and pick up the point that Mark said there, that leadership isn't a noun, it's a verb. Essentially, leadership is not a title, and the lowest form of leadership is title leadership. There are, other, you can lead through title, but you're not getting the best out of people, you're getting the least. And so leadership is actually a verb where we go out every day and we help people. And then through that, we can take things forward. So how would you just say, on the last topic of leadership, and then we'll move on to the next one, what about imposter syndrome? So I know just a friend just yesterday from school messaged me, we hadn't chatted in ages, and she was telling me how she's just got a job for the UN. And it's like her dream job. All her life, she's worked towards this job working for the UN in Brussels. And she's like, all I have now is imposter syndrome. The job doesn't start for 4 or 5 months, and I'm just sitting at home stressing with imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome is so incredibly common. Now, this is, of course, the thinking of, oh my God, I don't belong here. I'm not going to be capable. They're going to find out and say, how did we hire you? Get out of here. So many people have it. I've had it at times. I know people who work at top companies like Google and Goldman Sachs who have it. There are celebrities who have talked about having it. This is incredibly common. It is normal. That's actually a good thing. The only people who don't have any tinge of doubt are the narcissists, and we don't want to be them. So first, recognize this is okay. This is acceptable. Don't worry if you have it. Now, what can you do with this imposter syndrome? You can use that. And we're going to talk about how you're going to use it. We're going to talk about techniques to help diffuse it. I used to have this early on. I used to think I'd go to conferences and say, oh, I'd love to speak at a conference, but what could I possibly say? Everything I know is kind of obvious. And then I'd go to the conference and I'd listen to talks and say, this is totally obvious. My God, I could give something more interesting than this. I can't believe they picked this person. A friend of mine got hired by these, I believe it was a PE firm, a private equity firm. And they're paying him lots of money. And eventually said, look, I feel bad taking your money because this is just so easy and obvious to me. Like, I'm really stealing your money here. And they responded by saying, the reason we're giving you so much money is because it's totally easy and obvious to you. That's why we want someone smart, capable. So if you have imposter syndrome, first, recognize it's normal. Second, you can use some of that. A little bit of nervousness can be okay. Not a lot, but little is what propels us to get better. So say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to figure out, what do I have to do in this job? What are the key skills? How am I going to get better? Your friend who has 4 months, that's 4 months of training. And I'm not saying every day, but you spend 30 minutes a day, maybe 30 minutes every other day, just preparing, learning, training, reading, listening to great podcasts like this. You will be in such better shape. Now, here's another great technique that I talk about in the Career Toolkit. There's a technique used at the U.S. Supreme Court. When the judges sit around to discuss a case, They always begin by having the most junior judge speak first and then go in order of seniority. The thinking is a new junior judge to the bench might be intimidated or swayed by the more senior judge, and that's not their job. They really want everyone to bring their opinions. I use this same technique in my meetings. Now, it's useful because as the boss, I don't just want to say, well, I think we should do this, and everyone says, oh, don't want to disagree with the boss. I want to get their opinions. So they know I always go last. I want everyone else's opinion on the table. But here's the great thing. If while they're giving their opinions, I have my thoughts about where we should go. If I realize my thought is not as good as one that's given to me, no reason to bring up my dumb idea. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and go,
you have plenty of time to adjust, right?
Sarah, exactly. Sarah's got the right idea here. Okay, no problem. I didn't say anything stupid there. So feel free when you have imposter syndrome to listen and take in and ask for opinions and solicit it and go later, right? Say, well, I just want to get other opinions first. And that's going to maybe dissuade you from any dumb ideas. And look, it's fine to give a dumb idea. I still give plenty of dumb ideas, but that's going to make you less nervous because you're going to realize I'm going to filter some of those dumb ideas anytime there's a better idea in the room. And if there's not, well, then guess what? Your idea is the best in the room. Good thing you're there to give it.
Yeah. I think it's the thing I really like to roll into the next conversation, obviously, a bit is that having that bit of imposter syndrome makes you relatable as well. We all have this kind of, we all have a unique thing that is actually an incredible trait of ours. And the trials that we've gone through have turned into the triumphs, and the setbacks that we have turned into our comeback. And we all have that one thing that can make us so relatable to everyone else. And so it's so important that we just embrace that and embrace the challenges, embrace the setbacks, because it's also what makes us imperfectly perfect and what makes us relatable to people, which then leads us to one of the other big things in the career toolkit, and one of the other big essential skills is networking. And obviously, I love to work with people in the networking industry. Whatever entrepreneurial pursuit you have, whatever investment goal you have, or even if it's a pure workplace thing. I know in your app you've even got talking about preparing for job interviews and stuff like that. But the ability to network, your network is your net worth. Like, if you want to invest and be successful investing, you want to network with successful investors because they're going to know where the good investments are. If you want to have a good business, you want to network with other people who are good at business so that they can help you. So like charisma and leadership, how do we build our networking skills?
For a lot of people, they get tripped up because we have this image of networking of that master networker. I'm putting that in quotes because I don't think these people are. They walk into a conference room, right? You're at some event, you're at a conference, they walk into the room, and in 30 minutes, they come back and they've got a dozen cards. Like, oh, wow, like so many cards. You're so good that you met so many people. But here's the thing. I've met those people. And they walk up and they say, hey, Andrew, nice to meet you. My name is Mark. You have a card. Here's my card. Okay, great. Next. Hey, Sarah, nice to meet you. My name is Mark. What's your name? Okay, here's my card. Got your card. Okay, great. Next. It's like a drive-by. You have name and contact information, but you don't know the person. You haven't built a relationship with the person. That's not what networking is about. Networking is first and foremost about building relationships. Everyone knows how to build a relationship. You have them with your family, you have them with friends, you have them with coworkers. And especially for introverts who think, I don't want to go into this giant room and talk to a bunch of people. You don't have to. You're building relationships. You can build them in that giant room. You can meet 4 people at a time, or you can meet 4 people back to back. You can also meet one person at a time. You can just meet one person and then follow up one-on-one and build that relationship. But here's the key thing. Relationships take time. When you think about the people they didn't happen overnight. And so after you get the card, that's great that you got the card, but you have to build the relationship. Think about with dating apps. You would never say, oh, look, this person just swiped right on me, so she's my significant other now. Look, we both swiped right, practically getting married, right? No, that's crazy. You say, oh, we both swiped right. Okay, now we can start dating and building that relationship. But too many people think, oh, we got the business card, or we added each other on LinkedIn. But that's not networking. Now you have to do the relationship building piece of it. And so that's the mentality to have. Focus on building relationships.
I was going to ask you about introverts because, you know, I'm an introvert and my wife is a screaming extrovert. And so, you know, like she drags me along to parties and I'm never 100% happy there, but you kind of did answer that one. But I think, yeah, the really important, and again, like the really important underlying thing that at least I was picking up and I want to emphasize is that it's always about the process, not the result. And we can get so caught up in the result. So the result is that someone has 12 business cards, but what was the process to get there? And again, like so often in modern society, people are looking for that shortcut, but the shortcut deprives you of the process. And the process is where you learn the skills, and wealth is built in the skills. So how, you know, someone's come back and said, I've got 12 business cards, I'm a rock star. One person's come back and said, I've got one, but I actually spent a full hour connecting in the process with that person. Do you have like a top tip, or do you have a way to help people with the mindset of focusing on processes over results? Because I think too often we're so quick to focus on results, and goal setting is important, but goal setting is like the road signs along the destination. It's the destination that's the key, driving there.
Well, here's a way to think about it. Suppose you have to pack up and move your apartment this weekend. You can't afford a moving company. You got to get some people to help you out. Who do you call? Is it the guy you met at the conference last Tuesday? Is he going to be there? Is it the guy you met in the pub the other week? Or is it your friend from high school who you've known for 15 years? Who's going to show up, right? It's going to be the people with whom you have the deeper relationships. The bigger the ask, the deeper the relationship, because the more trust is needed for that. Now, it's not to say someone you met at the conference last week can't pass along your resume. He can. So, oh, yeah, we're okay, sure. Hey, met this guy at a conference. Here's his resume. I've passed along resumes like that. But that passing of the resume is not as strong as when I say, oh, this is Jen. Jen and I used to work together at this company for 3 years. She is fantastic. She is so dedicated and hardworking. Definitely take a look at Jen. Now, I've passed along both resumes, but one of those comes with a much stronger endorsement. And that endorsement came from the fact that we had a deeper relationship. I knew Jen for years together when we were working. So when you think about, you can have all sorts of relationships, but when you ask for things, the bigger the ask comes from people with whom we have deeper relationships. So if you're going to ask for bigger things, you can't just have that business card. And there are people who I know, they will pick up the phone, or they will at least read the email and respond. They might not do what I'm asking, but I know they'll do that because we've developed that relationship over the years.
So it's such fantastic value, Mark. You know, just so many important life skills, as we say. And I know even circling back to what we were talking about at the very, very start. And, you know, my background was, you know, college, university education. And as a physical therapist, physical therapy in Australia, at least 20 years ago when I was going through, was one of, if not the hardest degrees to get into. And I remember there was always this conversation of, well, you know, like to finish physiotherapy, to finish physical therapy, you know, people must be great. And I was like, well, a lot of my friends and even some, you know, staff that I worked with, unfortunately just didn't have people skills at all. And it was this kind of like, you know, I would always think like, why isn't someone pulling them aside at kind of first year, second year and saying, look, maybe just go over here and develop some kind of networking skills and people skills before you then move into the profession? Because I mean, the medical profession in particular, there's doctors with good bedside manner and doctors with terrible bedside manner stuff. And so do you think that's where we're heading? Like when you talk about, you know, modernizing high schools and modernizing colleges, do you think we're going to be looking at more like aptitude based testing, or even, you know, helping people out, or are we just sort of kind of stuck in a cycle that's a bit too hard to break, and it's up to the parents or it's up to the community to help develop these things?
I think we need to, as a society, for the following reason. We continue to automate. And what we know is automation changes jobs. Now, years ago, we used to be in the fields and we'd be picking wheat. So, you know what? This is a waste of human time. We can get a giant machine. It can pick wheat much faster than any of us can do it. And so thankfully, we don't have to spend a lot of time in the fields growing and harvesting our food. And now we can do things like talk on podcasts, or do online marketing, or programming, or accounting, or any of these other interesting fields that we like. Within these fields, the same thing is happening. We're saying, you know what? We need people to edit our documents, right? I need an editor for my book. Well, my editor had to do less work than she might have needed to do 30 years ago because I had spell check and grammar check, and that helped. I mean, I looked over it myself, but that caught other things I didn't. And that's actually getting better and better by the day, right? It used to just be spelling, and now it's spelling and grammar. We're still not at the point that I don't need an editor, but what the editor will do is she's no longer saying, I'm going to correct your typos. Most of the typos, most of the misspelled words, I already caught that. The editors today are focusing on, okay, this sentence is grammatically correct, but it's a little convoluted. Or I think we can rephrase this paragraph, right? This higher value. When we look at legal contracts, for example, there is similar types of tools. We'll call it spell check for contracts. Now, it's not looking for typos. You have normal editing for that. But it's things like if we do a contract and I say, okay, I'm going to pay you $10,000, it's going to flag, wait a second, Mark, you're in the US and hey, you're in Australia. So you said dollars. I'm going to flag this. Did you mean US dollars or Australian dollars? And that's something a human, we'd have a law associate would catch that. But now the law associate doesn't have to do it. The program can catch it. Okay, great. So what does the law associate do? Well, they're not doing the rote, oh, we have to put in Australian dollars. They're going to focus on something else, hopefully higher value. And so what we're continuing to do is automating away rote tasks. But rote tasks went from being mechanical to now being somewhat thinking tasks, but still the low-level thinking tasks. But we're going to eat away at that and automate more and more. And that frees us up for higher order thinking, for strategy, for the editor to say, let's think about your bigger message, for a lawyer to say, let's not worry, I'm less focused on redlining the contract, but more thinking about what's your business strategy and how does law come into it. And so as we shift away, we get to these bigger pictures, and that involves more human interaction, communicating about what is your strategy and how can my particular skill set help you. So these skills become more important because they are going to be less mechanical, or rather what we do is less mechanical. And therefore these skills are a key part of the human interaction in our future jobs.
It's a fantastic paradox, isn't it? That as we go more digital and as we become more digitally reliant to an extent, people crave personal value more. And I think it is all about that, isn't it? It's about adding value to someone. How do you network better? How do you lead better? How do you help yourself in a lot of life situations? It's about how can you be of more value to people. And I think if we can help people add more value to them, then the world can improve from sort of some of the current challenges we have. So, Mark, I really want to thank you for your time. It's after midnight in New York for Mark. It's nice and kind of relaxed lunchtime for me here, but Mark's staying up and he's doing the late shift for us. So just talking about your book and talking about your app, where can people, so if people are looking for some of these skills, they're looking for help with their networking, their leadership, their communication skills, all those things, where can they find your app? Where can they find your book?
You can buy the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local bookstores, standard places. I know right now, at least in the US, the book is highly discounted by Amazon. It's selling for around $3 a US, at least here. I don't know if the discount applies overseas, but you can check. Thank you, Jeff Bezos, for subsidizing the cost of the book. You can go to my website, which you have up there, thecareertoolkitbook.com. And there, of course, you can see links where to buy it. You can learn more about the book. Get in touch with me or follow me on social media. You can also, from the website, download that free app. I link to the Android and iPhone store. And the great thing is you don't even have to open the app. It's just going to pop up a tip every day at a preset time you determine. That's going to help you retain it. Because I know when you read a book like this, you forget a few weeks later, but you're just going to have it pop up and go, oh, there's a good piece of advice. Swipe it away. And then there's the whole resources page. On the resources page, I link to other free resources. There are downloads about how you can do free training programs at your company. Just download it and implement it yourself. You don't need me for any of it. I link to other great books that I reference in mine. So all of this can be found on the website, thecareertoolkitbook.com.
Pop it back up there again. And just a reminder, guys, so if you're sharing it out, so those who've shared it, comment, share below, and we'll either send a copy out to you. Mark will send a copy out direct to you if you are in his country at least, or we'll get some digital digital assets basically sent out to you, which is really, really cool. So Mark, I really want to thank you for your time and thank you for staying up late, obviously, to do the podcast today. Guys, and again, just remember, whatever your pursuit, whatever the goal is, and I love to talk about financial freedom. All of those things will come down to, at the end of the day, adding value to the world. No one ever got financial freedom. Well, if you do want financial freedom without adding value, you may as well just buy lotto tickets. I mean, that's kind of the one way to do it. And even then, you got to go give value to the person you're buying the lotto tickets off. But otherwise, find ways to give value to the world, find ways to lead yourself and lead others, and find way to surround yourself with great people. And like Mark was saying with this app, when you see it every day, it's going to get into your subconscious and you're going to start to think differently. If you surround yourself with great people and you network with great people, it's going to get into your subconscious and start wiring you differently. Mark, thank you so much for your time today, man.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
And guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all soon.